Shalom, brothers. Akim, this is Kyle Ahmad. I want to give all praise and honor to the Most High and the Son Yahweh, Wah Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the elders. Peace and blessings to the elect. Honors to you brothers out there doing the work. And video I got for you today was inspired by the brother Yahweh Tazadak, who just recently joined our camp. And we're talking, what was it? Today's Sunday, Friday night after camp. You know, we're all just fellowshipping, and we're at this restaurant. Brothers get together. You start talking about what's going on in the world and whatnot. And it just so happened that this brother had been researching some things and came across this word, which I'm about to show you. All right. You know, I know if he watches this video, I told him I was gonna just take his video and not give him any credit. But that brother, he's the one that put me on to what I'm gonna impart to you brothers. And the brother Yatazak had did a video on this as well. And I'm gonna show you just pretty much show you on screen, read some of the history behind this subject and all that. And but to get straight to it, let's read the scripture here. It says, Isaiah 51 verse 14, the captive exile hasteneth that he may be loosed, and that he should not die in the pit, nor that his bread should fail. Okay, what does it mean, the captive exile? Well, who's the captive exile? It's talking about the nation of Israel, the 12 tribes. Okay, how are they captive? Well, we're here in America. Okay, we're forced to serve captivity here under the so-called white man, under Edom, under the wicked, for breaking and transgressing the law of the Most High. Okay? And how are we exiled? Because by that breaking and transgressing of the law, we're no longer in our land. Okay? Where's our land at? Israel. Okay? But we're not there anymore because we went off. That's why we're in the condition that we're in today. Okay? Now, when you come here, you see, this website is called Mostly Odd, which I've never really looked into this website itself, but you see here the word we're going to get into is Drapetomania. Okay, the freedom of sickness, which this is actually the title of a book. You can see this book right here. Now, I just ordered a book. It had a slightly different title. And, Lord willing, that gets here sometime this week. I'm definitely interested to see if there's any other, juicy topics and information in it that I haven't seen through researching yet. But let's read and see just how much of a devil these so-called white people are, because you gotta understand, these so-called white people do not want to let us go. Okay? They will not let us go. The only way we're gonna receive freedom, alright, is through the salvation of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, being of the elect, being beamed up in the chariots. That's it. Okay? So let's read. It says, in 1851, the prominent American physician Samuel Adolphus Cartwright, which is the man you see right here, this picture, observed black slaves that fled captivity and saw an illness. So, wait a minute. He saw that all the hell that the so-called white man was putting on us, the so-called Negro, Judah, Benjamin, Levi, okay, that was here serving captivity, and then the ones that would break free and run, he saw that as an illness. I mean, not us getting the hell, this shit kicked out of us, excuse my language, and catching pure hell. Alright? Not that being the reason that we were running away, but no, it was because that was an illness. Alright? Drapetomania, or the disease causing Negroes to flee, was the title to his paper, explaining that black slaves did not want freedom. If they escaped it, they were ill. The cause was masters who treated slaves as something close to human beings, and slaves who considered themselves to be individuals of worth. Freedom was an illness, and Cartwright had the cure. So This goes to show you these devils. Hey, the scripture says, "Woe to them which decree unrighteous decrees and write wickedness, which they have prescribed." This is something that this man observed and came up with to justify them keeping us locked down in slavery, in hardcore slavery. Okay? He actually labeled a medical term on us for the simple fact that we wanted to free a wicked oppression under the so-called white man. This is how much of a fucking devil these so-called white people are. Alright, they're not your friends. They've never been your friends. Okay? If they go back to the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Edom, they are not your friends. They are your enemy. Okay? It says here, if a slave becomes sulky and dissatisfied without reason, then they may have drapetomania and be about to flee. Okay, now I'm going to bring up this in Wikipedia. Alright, it pretty much says the same thing. I don't think this goes as into depth, but to break down the word drapetomania, as you can see here, the etymology, the Greek word, it comes from a Greek word, drapetes. Alright, now the word drapetes means a runaway, in this case a slave. Alright, and then mania means madness or frenzy. Alright, that's where you get the word maniac. Alright, or maniacal. So in other words, we were mad or crazy and we wanted to run away. And then that was the so-called illness that they labeled on the Jakes, the Israelites, who wanted to escape captivity. Alright? Well, check it out, so-called white man. I got news for you. We're all drapetomaniacs. Those, especially those of the elect. Really, that's the one who, if you made a correct diagnosis, alright, as concerning the elect, we want to get the hell out of here. Yes. Yes, we've come back to, only we're not crazy. We've come back to our right mind and seen that you're the damn devil, and we want to get free. Okay? We want to get the hell out of here. Alright, so it's concerning us, you know what, we got drapetomania in a sense. Okay, because we don't want to just sit here under you and while you're ruling. Alright? It says here, if a slave becomes sulky and dissatisfied without reason, then they may have drapetomania and be about to flee. Cartwright recommended whipping the devil out of them until they became submissive again, the state to which they belonged. So, coming back here to, actually I didn't read it yet, but let's go ahead and read it now. It says, Jeremiah 50 verse 33, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go. Alright? They refused to let them go. So, it says here, we'll read again, Cartwright recommended whipping the devil out of them until they became submissive again, the state to which they belong. So they have, this is what you call really a ruling class mentality. This man here had Samuel Adolphus Cartwright had a ruling class mentality. He believed that we weren't human. Alright, him and people of his like mind, the nation of Edom, believed we were unhuman and that we believed we were born to be slaves. Okay? That's why scripture says in Ecclesiastes, I've seen servants upon horses and princes walking as slaves among the ground, loosely paraphrasing. Okay? An alternative remedy was to take a running away, an alternative remedy was to make running away impossible by having the big toe from both feet severed, hence curing the disease. So they would cut your big toes off so you couldn't take off running. Alright? But you still got people of our nation that think the so-called white man isn't the devil. Look at his track record. This is just this is not even a fraction of his track record. And had not the spirit jumped on Yahweh as a doctor come across this word, I would have never heard of it. If you would have called me this back in the world, I would have just looked at you funny like, what the hell are you talking about? The hell is a drapetomaniac? And it probably wouldn't have dawned on me to look it up. Okay? But the Wada Yahweh, that he reveals certain things like this to his servants. Okay? So check this out. It says, looking at it from what is technically the future, we can see easily that something strange is afoot here. Instead of treating black slaves as people, Cartwright assumed that the place of a slave was to remain a slave. He used the Bible as evidence, taking sections talking about the faithfulness of a servant to master to justify his assertions that slaves should be treated as little more than children. Okay? Which them using the Bible to justify us in the way that they did in putting us into slavery was wicked. But according to the Bible, according to Deuteronomy 28 verse 68, we would go into Egypt again with ships by way of ships, and no man shall buy thee. Okay, or no man shall save thee. Okay, so that was the what they call, what you would call manifest destiny, wasn't a Bible for us to go into slavery, but the so-called white man used the Bible in a wicked way to justify him beating us, raping our women and children, hell, raping the men in a lot of cases, alright, and enslaving us, putting us through hell, alright. It says children to be whipped, that is. The viewpoint led him to make some suspect pseudo-scientific contributions to the body of scientific racism. He even believed that the lazy slaves weren't upset, they were too ill, or they too were ill. And now check this out. It says diaesthesia Ethiopica, or rascality as it was referred to by slave owners, explain the apparent lack of will to work shown by slaves. This mental illness was unique, though, in that it had physical symptoms shown on the body. A decreased level of skin sensitivity and lesions across the body were present in all cases of rascality. Cartwright ignored the possibility that whipping the devil out of them had caused this, and came up with a resourceful cure for the disease. The best means to stimulate the skin is first to have the patient well washed with warm water and soap, then anoint it all over in oil, and to slap the oil in with a broad leather strap and beat the hell out of us, then put the patient to some hard kind of work in the sunshine. But you telling me this so-called white man is not the devil? Alright, any person, if you're looking at this video and reading this, and you still come away with the conclusion that the so-called white race does not have to pay for its crimes, we have nothing to talk about. Alright? And you pretty much don't have any reason to live. You need to be put to death. Okay? It says here, whipping for the whipped. The Medical Association of Louisiana found his case to be reasonable, and his findings were published in DeBoe's Review and widely circulated. The southern United States agreed with his findings, and slaves felt the results. In the northern United States, his findings were ridiculed. In the northern United States, I don't know, I guess they just, either I'm reading that wrong, I've read that wrong, or they just typed that hella wrong. But pretty much in the north, where they so-called abolished slavery, they weren't really feeling this man's tactics. Alright, Frederick Law Olmsted even published a counterpaper pointing to the evidence that white indentured servants had escaped from captivity. Jokingly suggested that Drapetomania was a white European disease that traders had introduced to Africa. Alright, and you know, there's not really much else in the rest of this article, but the point being, these people, the so-called white man, came up with a medical term, an actual medical term, alright, to label on our people for them running away from captivity in order to justify them keeping us in captivity. And you're going to tell me this so-called white man is not the devil? You got to be kidding me. Alright? Read Jeremiah 50:33 one more time. It says, "Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast and refused to let them go. Alright? So, let me keep reading. It says here, the Redeemer is strong, the Lord of hosts is his name. He shall thoroughly plead their cause. So when the Lord comes back, he's going to plead our cause. How's he going to plead our cause? He's going to take us from the hand of the so-called white man, alright? The elect of the nation of Israel will be taken from the hand of the so-called white man, and then they're going to be destroyed. Okay? That he may give rest to the land and disquiet the inhabitants of Babylon. So the salvation for these people, alright, that have to sit under the hand of the so-called white man, and white men like this, alright, salvation is coming, and then you so-called white people, you Edomites, you wicked, are going to be destroyed. Okay? Alright? Last scripture I got here, Revelation 13:9 and 10. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. So recompense is coming, alright? Pretty soon we're going to label you Drapetomaniacs, because you thought that we wanted to run away during our hardcore captivity under you. You guess what? When the Most High gives his elected power and sets up his kingdom, and you gotta be under the boot, I don't know how you gonna make it. All right. Speaking to you specifically, the nation of Edom, and you other nations too. All right. Although you other nations ain't gonna get it as bad as the so-called white man, and then after 1,000 years you'll be all right. Okay. So just remember, brothers. Drapetomania. Alright, and according to the so-called white man, you're a bunch of Drapetomaniacs. But just think to yourself, you don't want to be up under this so-called white man anyway, so hey, cheers to you, Samuel Cartwright. Cheers. Thank you. Alright, you gave me a proper diagnosis. Till the next show, Shalom.